let's get into it.
And get the conversation started.
Welcome to Inspired Men Talk.
Podcast where we sit down with real people and talk about their journey.
The stuff they've been through, the bits that shaped them.
And the moments where things started to change.
We talk about men's mental health.
But in a way that actually sounds like real life.
Some of it's serious.
And some of it is a little bit lighter.
But it's always honest and brave.
Because most of this stuff doesn't get talked about enough.
And if there's one thing we've seen time and time again,
is that there's always a way back.
So I'm Gary.
And I'm Peter.
And this is Inspired Men Talk.
We all fail, and sometimes we fail because things are out of our control. I think mostly in my life, and this is not me being big-headed, mostly my failures have come from things that are without my circle of control. You know, everything that's within my circle of control, I think I've made a success of.
Yeah.
I hope I have anyway.
Well,
yeah.
We're talking about that then, so we move on to those things you didn't control. So you could control, hopefully, that you met with a lovely lady who took you by the scruff of your neck and made you behave, by the sounds of it.
Eventually.
And you supported her business massively.
Yeah, she had a little hairdresser's down Mayor's Walk called The Strand. And she had this amazing little idea to use the room upstairs as an evening gown shop. And it absolutely took off. It took off. And she ended up running it with her mother. And they decided to go and open in Rivergate. Across from Fratelli's.
Yeah.
And they did prom dresses. And we used to get people from all over the country. And I built them a little website, you know, the very early days of the internet, sort of 2005. And it wasn't transactional, but people would ring up and I'd put all the pictures of the dresses on there. And people would ring up and say, oh, I really like that dress. You know, give us your measurements. And we'd order it from them and we'd send it. So we're sending dresses out all over, you know, packed out in the shop. And at that moment, that's when I had left TV. So they'd paid me a little bit of money to leave TV because I thought I was going to do TV forever until I had a little daughter. And then I realised I didn't really want to be living in and out of hotels and suitcases and missing her grow up. So I left TV and I put everything into this shop. And then, of course, 2008, the banking crash. And we just opened a second shop in Stamford, used all our cash flow, because we didn't know it was coming.
Yeah.
We got two very profitable businesses, but maybe this is my fault, we'd run them under one umbrella. If we'd run them under different umbrellas, we probably could have kept one. But a lot of people we paid money to just bankrupted themselves and repackaged themselves and took money out of our pocket. And we were about 40 grand down. And we went to the bank, who were a year ago walking overdraft papers down to Rivergate from HSBC, walked them down.
Yeah.
They wanted to give us money. I rang them up and said, we're going to be about 40 grand short. I said, you know, we just need a bit of help. If you can lend us 20, you know, business is still quite good. We'll make it up. You know, look, we're taking this, we're taking that. And they just went, nah, sorry about that. And by the way, we're converting your overdraft into a loan, 12% above base rate. I said, well, we're going to go bankrupt then. And we did. And we nearly lost every single thing I and my wife had ever worked for. We kept our house, which is just about the only thing we kept. And not one person was prosecuted for that banking crash.
No,
it's terrible.
And how many more people were in my and my wife's position? Perfectly good businesses ruined by greed.
Yeah. And that's got to be a little bit soul destroying, I guess. How did you get through that part of life? What was it that got you through?
I think it's probably the most difficult part of my life ever, because you look back and you think, oh, I shouldn't have left TV. Oh, I shouldn't have done that. You know, I could have still been traveling the world. I could have still been because I was earning big bucks in 2000, 2001, 2002, more than I'm earning now. You have recriminations and you and your missus fall out. It's your fault. You know, much as you love each other, it's really difficult to go through that when you're at absolute rock bottom. And it was even worse for me, I think, because I go back to what I've talked about earlier. I'd look back and think, I know what it's like to be skinned. I don't want to be skinned.
Yeah.
But eventually I just gave myself a big shake. I looked at myself in the mirror and thought, well, you know how to do this. Yeah, you've got to start again, but you've done it once. You do it again. And it was tough. It was hard, but I just started ringing people, and I started ringing BBC local radio stations like Northampton. Who else did I ring? I rung 3 counties in Hertfordshire, and I rung loads of them and said, if you got any cover shifts, this is my background, former TV sports correspondent, 5 Live, local radio, blah, blah. So I ended up just going around doing cover shifts for quite a while. And then Northampton gave me a Sunday morning show, which was great fun, actually, because I was really irreverent on it, because everybody else had got really sort of quite religious Sunday morning shows. And I was doing stuff like grabbing a handful of vinyl out the library and tell me when to put the needle on. And I was it's proper record player, and I purposely scratch it and say, oh, there you go, it's on. And it had been the middle of My Cuckoo by Alvin Stardust. So it was great, and we got record figures for that. We were doing really well. But it was hard work, so having to travel quite a bit. And my wife took losing the business really, really hard. It took her probably 2 or 3 years to get over it. And in the meantime, I thought, I've just got to earn enough to pay the rent, pay the mortgage, and keep our house. And it gradually built up and built up and built up. And then I remember Northampton offering me a drive time show. And I said, I can't take it. I said, I've just been offered the editor's job at Radio Cambridgeshire in Peterborough. And I came to Peterborough just to run that office and teach young journos how to make good radio. And within 3 months, the breakfast show geezer left. I filled in. And then about a month later, they said, can you run the office and do the breakfast show? And I went, if you make it worth my while. And they did. So I just kept doing it and loved it, and created a really, really powerful Peterborough breakfast show, actually.
Was that on Westgate, near the Bull Hotel?
No, it was Crossgate. So, where Mind is now, on the corner, across from what used to be Ask, the building down there. It was on that corner there. And I walked past it the other day and thought, God, that was our studio. And now you don't see the BBC in Peterborough anymore, so it's a real shame, because we created a really popular show there that held people to account, that entertained people, that everybody knew about within the space of 6 to 12 months, I think. We had a really good audience for it, so it was good.
And I think it shows again that you gave that action. You just constantly kept trying, constantly kept pestering people, and it pays off. So I think that's really lovely. That's a really nice example for people. I'm
sure people that don't know me but know of me will look at my life and think, he's had it easy. It's all come to me. Look at him. Look, I bet he's minted. I bet he's a millionaire.
Yeah. But
they don't know we lost it all.
Whenever I've seen you, I thought, he's loaded, he is. That's why
I never buy a pint, though, Gary. I've
noticed. That's why I thought he's got to be rich, because he never spends.
Yeah, let's not talk about it. It's £7 now down in London. It's ridiculous.
Jesus.
It's £7 in Stamford, mate.
Yeah,
blimey.
It's same up here.
So where are you now, and what's been the journey to there?
So going from that Peterborough breakfast show, then there were cutbacks at the BBC, so they made it a county-wide breakfast show.
Yeah.
So we were broadcasting to Cambridge and Peterborough, and I insisted that we still broadcast 2 days a week from Peterborough, because I thought it was important to do that. Normally, when you broadcast county-wide, certainly I was taught at Hereward, you don't tell people where you are, you broadcast down, yeah? And that's spot on, that's what you should do. But I wanted to make a figure of it, that we're broadcasting from Peterborough today. And then Wednesday, I would say, we're broadcasting from Cambridge today, because it sounds massive. You're here, you're there, we're in your patch. Yeah. So I made a point of doing that. The bosses hated it, but I said, no. And we had record listening figures. I think we had 85,000 people listening to our breakfast show, which, when you consider now, they've only got 68,000 listens to the whole of Radio Cambridge all week. So wow. We had more listening. And we had 75,000 listening to mid-morning when I moved to mid-morning and did that. It was... Without naming names, it was a turbulent time at Cambridgeshire. There was some bullying going on in management. The management were awful. I complained about it, and it wasn't really bullying towards me, but I saw this person bullying others, and I won't stand for that. I won't have it. And at the time, I'd gone freelance in 2014 to allow me to earn extra money, because BBC doesn't pay much.
No.
So, not local radio.
I was
probably earning 15 or 20 grand doing other things. And they turned around to me in 2017, despite telling me in 2013 I had to have a private limited company to be freelance. So I set one up, did that, and then did loads of other stuff. Loads of bullying going on. They'd not listened to me. The geezer in it Nothing had happened to him. And then they turned around and said, oh, and by the way, from now on, you need to sort out your tax affairs with IRS because, you need to do all that. And they dropped all freelancers in it, really, the BBC. And you can't do any other work if you're working for the BBC. And I went,
Well, you can't be freelance then.
well, exactly. So they were trying to say that, I forget what the thing was, but the tax man was trying to say you were employed.
Yes.
And I was saying, I'm not. I'm freelance. I've got a public limited company. I do this other work. And I did quite a lot because I was teaching at university, the media degree and journalism degree, a kid with no A-level teaching a journalism degree. But I loved it. I loved doing that. So in 2017, I made the really, 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 and I mean broke my heart, a sad decision to leave. And I've not presented a radio program since. And I set my own communications and marketing company up and did really well. I got lots of contracts from local government, huge fostering campaigns that were really, really successful. We found lots and lots of extra foster carers, loads of kids close to home. And then COVID hit.
Yeah,
and I lost every contract because the local government just went, oh no, we haven't got any money. I said, but look what we've done with the fostering campaign. You're saving £4 million a year because it's double. It costs double to send kids out to foster places outside of the county. We were keeping the majority of it in and getting loads of foster carers. And they went, we'd love to do it, but we ain't got any money. And I thought, and I kept going with other stuff for about a year and a half, and then it got really quite perilous. So I thought I need to look for a job. And I got a job at the cathedral, which was lovely.
But that's a really massive movement. So, going from DJing at Shanghai Sam's and previous other iterations of DJing and right through all that lovely entertainment world to promoting a cathedral. And the cathedral's been needing to, generate income forever, but more now than ever. And that's a big thing. But it's very different from anything you've ever done.
Well, it is, and it's not, because instead of selling myself, I'm selling the cathedral. And that's the way I look at it. I think it's an amazing building, and I've always promoted it when I was on the radio. I always went out of my way to help Stuart Orme and the Reverend Richard Cattle and all these people, great personalities. I always went out of my way because I love the building. I'm not in any way, shape or form religious, not a bone in my body. In fact, me and the Dean often have conversations about, show me the proof, show me 2 independent sources, and I'll believe you, God, and all that sort of stuff. And he said, well, you've got to have faith. I said, well, yeah, my brain don't work like that. So, but for me, it's about keeping that building for the people of Peterborough and the wider area and keeping it open. And it was a bit of a learning curve. There were many things I had to learn about the way the cathedral works, but no more of a learning curve than anything else I've ever done. I mean, when I worked into Radio Cambridgeshire, when I left Hereward in 94, I wasn't a journalist. Somebody said to me, can you just write me a VP? And I went, what's a VP? It's a voice piece. Oh, right. So I write it and then I voice it up. Oh, okay. Didn't know how to edit. None of this stuff. And I've got to say a big thank you to a guy called Mick Meadows, who used to be on Hereward as well, Mick and Sarah Jane on an evening. And he was at Cambridgeshire at the time. And he sat with me for 2 months. And I was drowning a bit. And he showed me the way to do stuff. He showed me how to do it. I'd never used a computer at that point because Hereward was, I think we got our first advert computer, but everything was analog. So to go somewhere with computers, it was a big learning curve. But like I said, everything I've ever done, there's been some sort of learning curve, but you have to back yourself, and go into the cathedral and think, well, I'll learn about cathedral way of life. I'll sort that. I know how to sell stuff. I'll be great. I'll be fine. And 3 years later, I'm still there. They've not sacked me. So
I've got one question about that. And then Peter's got a question about cars. And then we've both got a question about music. And then I've got a question of how you did it. So one of the things about Peterborough, I've always seen it as a village or a city with a village mentality. And I think what you said about there's a lot in Peterborough people don't know about, and the cathedral is one of those. Why are you still doing it? What's driving you to big up Peterborough, let alone the cathedral?
As I said, I came here in 1989 and I've never really left. I live outside of Peterborough now, but I've either worked and or lived in Peterborough since 1989. Even when I worked for 6 o'clock news, 10 o'clock news in White City, I'd commute back to Peterborough on the 9 o'clock train. There's something about this city that once you're in it, it draws you in. And I think it's the most underdeveloped, unsung, appreciated city there is. There's so much potential. We're the only city with a riverbank that's not developed. It's bonkers. The city centre's been crying out for regeneration since John Peach decided to concrete it over and put some fountains in. I said to him at the time on the radio, "What's your vision, John?" He went, "We've got some fountains." I said, No, that's not a vision, John. I said, "Is it going to be a mini Covent Garden? Is it going to be this? Is it going to be that?"
You mean the fountains that won't switch on?
Well, exactly. I think being on the radio every day, fighting for Peterborough and fighting for people that live in Peterborough. And I think one of the reasons the radio show was successful as well goes back to what I said earlier, is I know what it's like to be skint. And I've always got that in my head. And I can always empathise with people that live on the Welland or live in Ravensthorpe or wherever they are, and they're struggling. And they are struggling at the moment. People are struggling. And I can empathise with it, and I can understand it, and I can appreciate what it's like. And I think that helps. And that informs a lot of my decisions at the cathedral now. When we talk about ticket prices and everything else, to come and see the Titanosaur, we made it £6, which is nothing in terms of seeing, large-scale events. But we made it that purposely so as many people as possible could come see it, and, it was affordable. But going back to what you said about, I've just got a passion for the city, and I want to see it develop. Before I retire in 8-9 years' time, I want to look back on the city and think, well, I've had a hand in that. I helped make that better. I helped keep the cathedral open. I've worked with others, and we are working behind the scenes right across the city centre with the council, with Queensgate, the bid. Everybody else is wanting to make Peterborough City Centre better. And it is going to be better. There are things going on that are going to develop it and make it better. And I can't wait to see the day when, people in Peterborough are apathetic. And they're apathetic for a reason, because they've been overpromised and underdelivered for 40 years. After you got the new town and then it stopped.
Yeah, the Peterborough effect.
Yeah, and I can understand it. And I keep saying to politicians, I know them all, obviously, because I've interviewed them all. And I'm constantly on at Shabina now saying, delivery is key. Delivery, you were at that conference when I said delivery is key. If people can see it, feel it and touch it, and it's changing for the better, you will change people's perceptions. And you watch this space, in the next 2 years, things are going to look and feel much, much better.
It's amazing. So Peterborough is on the up, so that's cool. But I want to go back in history, and Peterborough's got Peter. I can call you Peterborough from now on, Peter.
Amazing.
Peter is going to ask you a really serious question.
Right, before we get to that question, right? So before I get to that question, I was just going to say, have you thought about advertising the cathedral in Russia? Because apparently a lot of Russians come over here to look at cathedral spires. Anyway, right, the question.
Yeah.
So the question, what has been your favourite car to either own or drive?
Well, when I was making really good money DJing, and bearing in mind my first car was a Mark II Ford Escort with cracked sills that I bought for 500 quid. And my first proper flashy car was a white XR3i.
Oh.
And that was probably 1990. And it went like off a shovel.
Yeah.
And not that I drove over the speed limit, of course. But, I thought back then that was the dogs. I still remember. I've had other things since. I've had Evokes and this and that, and but that was a raw piece of tin that looked the dogs, and I really enjoyed driving it. I really did.
Yeah. No, they're great cars. I had an XR2. I didn't quite get to the XR3.
Yeah.
But yeah, and everyone knows their first car. Everyone remembers their first car. I had a Datsun Cherry.
I had a Ford Escort Mark II. Yeah.
There you go. Everyone remembers
It
the
didn't
first
have
car.
crack seals. Yeah.
I got some filler from British Air. I remember getting some filler from British Aerospace and filling the sills. And then and the engine used to leak a bit. So we used to have this rubber that used to coat stuff in British Aerospace. So I got a load of that rubber and just coated the engine in it.
Jeez.
So it didn't leak. It didn't leak anymore.
Amazing.
Smell.
Yeah. Yeah, it's quite a nice smell, to be honest.
So,
incredible.
Going back to everything, because we're getting near the end of this podcast, so a bit of wisdom, really. You've been through coming from a really poor, necessarily challenging upbringing, brought some fortitude into it and decided where you wanted to go, got some luck, but actually had some really bad luck, which was out of your control, but you've kept going and you've progressed continually in some format. How did you do that? Because there's somebody out there now, because times are tough for some people. I live on the Welland. I've lived there for 30 odd years. I got moved there when I first moved into Peterborough. Look, And it's like, well, stay there and it's fine. But there's people who are struggling and they might end up where you are or you were.
Yeah, and I, as I said earlier, I've always been mindful of that. I've always tried to be kind to others, and I won't accept anybody being unkind. If I see it online or I see it anywhere else, I'll call it out. And sometimes to my own detriment, I'll call people out on social media, and it'll create a thread of people going, "Oh, well, it's all right for you." And I'll say, "No, please don't talk like that. Please don't treat people like that." And I genuinely mean this. I try to be kind and think of others at all times. But I also think that, we've all had our down days. And I've had times when we went, bust in 2008. I generally thought I've worked all my life for nothing. And that was I was proper down. I mean, it's dark thoughts.
Mm.
But if you keep yourself open to possibility and to change, and you can drive yourself forward, you'll make luck. You'll make some good luck as well. Bad luck happens to you when you're not looking. It comes along and it smacks you, and it's always going to come along. You're always going to get, life is always going to be like that. It's never going to be like that. I mean, it appears to be like that for some people, but you never know what's going on behind closed doors. So I would say to people, if you're feeling down right now, if you're feeling skint right now, if you think there's no way out and there's nothing you can do, there is. And there's people you can talk to these days. I'm lucky I've always had good friends, and friends that would kick me up the bum, friends that would push me, friends that would tell me, you can. And I've always had that, as you said, that thing inside me, that self-confidence, even when it's knocked to its extreme. And when you've been up there as well, I think I had an added layer of embarrassment as well.
Yeah.
I couldn't reach out to everybody because I couldn't ring people I'd worked with in TV and say, a bit broke at the minute, I'd like to come back. Because once you've got out, you're out, and it's embarrassing. You can't. So I had a bit of that as well. So, but I would say, don't be embarrassed. Don't be embarrassed to talk to people. And it's dark. If it's a dark day today, the sun will come up tomorrow. It will. And there is opportunity out there to do things, and just be open to change. Because the one thing I've learned in my life, change is flipping inevitable.
Yeah.
It's how you adapt. It's how you.
Okay, thank you for that. So we've got a lot. We was talking just before you came on about the bios you sent me, and Peter mentioned a phrase, and I said there's a song about that. So what song do you think we were talking about? Being a DJ, I was going to tell you, but you know everything about music. Apparently, all DJs do.
Things Can Only Get Better by Dee.
Nice, it's a good one.
See, you're too good for us, Peter. Give us about these.
Well, I looked at it and I went, I said, he's got knocked down, but he gets back up again. So we went Chumbawamba.
Tub Thumping. I used to play that because I used to do the announcing at Peterborough Pirates for Mickey Vincent. We talked about Mickey Vincent. I used to do the announcing. I did it for a season, and I made some little tapes. Every time they scored, it'd either be "Woohoo" by Blur, or it'd be "Get Knocked Down, Get Up Again." so yeah. I mean that's a good tune, Tub Thumping. Chumbawamba. Not my favourite album, or my favourite ever album is Kings of the Wild Frontier by Adam and the Ants, but I'll take Chumbawamba.
I used to love them. Yeah,
I still do. I still sometimes get in the car and just flick on my Ants.
But that's a guilty secret. Should you be saying that on a podcast? I'll have to.
But everyone's got it,
isn't
But everyone's got their guilty secret of music, right? For all of us.
I'm not guilty about it. I love it. Anybody talks to amp music for people. Yeah, all right. Yeah. A New Royal Family of Wild Nobility.
Yeah.
I don't mind that.
Well, but I mean, we're going to finish the podcast now, but I've got to say, I love AC/DC, Queen, people like that. But I also love Leo Sayer. So, Do you know? I'll end on this if you've got to finish. But my favourite ever radio show that I used to do. So every bank holiday at Radio Cambridgeshire, I instigated, and the bosses again hated it, but it was the most popular thing. All request bank holiday Monday shows. So 9 till 12, ring in, give me a reason to play a song, and I'll play you Freddie and the Dreamers, Leo Sayer, AC/DC, or whatever. And I used to do it all live. So I used to drag all the music into a run order, and I'd just be, as I was talking, sorting them out so you're not playing too much of one thing at once. So I'd play some Leo Sayer, then I'd play AC/DC, then I'd play Adam and the Ants, then I'd play Motorhead, then I'd play, Hot Chocolate. And it was fantastic. I love doing it. Most fun I've ever had on the radio. That's cool.
Yeah.
So, Paul, we're just going to finish, but tell us exactly how people, if they want to get hold of you, they want to have a go at you online or whatever you want, or they want to visit the lovely cathedral, how do people find out more?
So if you want to have a conversation with me, I'm readily available on Facebook. Just search at Paul Stainton. Same on Twitter, although I don't go on Twitter so much these days. But I'm always happy to have a conversation. I think the most beautiful thing we've ever done from the radio, by the way, is we built an online family on Facebook who still communicate with each other now. There's probably about 100 people who are still talking to each other and only met through our radio shows on Facebook.
Wow.
And the best thing about them is there's tourists, there's liberals, there's left-wingers, there's right-wingers, and I love having conversations because unlike America, we can't be polarized. You've got to agree to disagree with people. And I leave it like that sometimes. Look, that's your opinion, man, but we can have a chat about it. I don't agree with you, but see you soon. Because you should always be able to have a conversation. So you can find me on social media. I'm all over it. As for the cathedral, we've got so many things on at the cathedral these days, and I think we've completely transformed the cathedral in the last couple of years. And it's great that so many partners are working with us to drive footfall into the city centre. So we've got Titanosaur on at the moment, half term next week. Kids are going to be coming. We've sold lots of tickets. It's going to be packed. We've got The Longest Yarn 2 coming, which is a huge series of knitted Second World War scenes. The first one was mega, and this will be busy. Older people come to it, but it's lovely. That starts in June. And then in July and August, we've got Travelling Bricks, which is 1 million Lego bricks models and that you can come and look at. We've got a 7-meter long Titanic. And then we've got a massive play area with Lego. And then we've got a huge brick pit in the middle of the cathedral where adults and kids can play together, turn their phones off, turn their screens off, detox, and just play, have fun. So that's all happening this summer. Travelling Bricks can be brilliant.
I know a couple of people who are going to be coming to that now.
It's it's amazing how many adults and children have commented on it, and it's almost equal, really.